Blissful rides, blinding speed, and blistering performance. These were the words that defined the American pony car. It was the joy of the 60s and America's answer to its youth's demand for speed, power, and adrenaline rush. The perfect combination of style, sporty design, and affordability. A model that did not only have legendary cars in its lineup, but also birthed the art of hot rodding. But this is not the story of a pony car. Rather, this is the story of a pony car that transcended its beastly nature and got even wilder and faster. A car that started as a pony but evolved into a full-fledged thoroughbred. A car that commanded respect and stood proud in a market where Ford and Chevrolet ruled. A tire-burning, fire-breathing, highway-ripping car that was an absolute beast on drag strips and highways. It was a product of doggedness and passion for competitive excellence. It was a car that bore witness to the dominance of America in the high-end performance car market. The hearse took a prominent car brand to its final resting place. It was the great American longsword. It was the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am WS6. You see, in the 60s, every young American wanted exactly the same type of car. A car that was fast and powerful, that was not too big, like a station wagon, but could still make an impression. A very nice impression. The type of impression that earns you an interesting night with your date after a night at the cinema. You get that, don't you? A car that screamed sex appeal and youthful exuberance. You know how the story went. Ford came out with the Mustang in 1964, and the rest, they say, is history. While young American men switched allegiances from old boring cars to the Mustang, the ladies switched affection from non-Mustang owners to those who owned Mustangs. Yeah, it is wild, but the game is the game. Don't blame the player, blame the game. The Mustang did not become culture-defining only because it upped the performance car game and became the hottest chick magnet in town. It did so because it also created a new segment of automobiles, pony cars. The pony came from its horse logo, and soon the most popular car type in the US at the time was the pony car model. That was the story we all heard. But there is something fundamentally wrong with that piece of history. And no, it is not the part where ladies switched sides. That did happen, and you can confirm with your granddad. He either got someone's girl with his Mustang or had his girl taken by someone who drove a Mustang. Meaning you could have had a different grandmother and, well, you know what, let's not go there. The part that everyone got wrong in this story is that Ford was not the first to build a high-performance car for the American young bloods at the time. It was Pontiac. Yeah, the boring old nephew to General Motors and the cousin to a more popular Chevrolet. Yes, that Pontiac. What happened was Pontiac got a young manager at the time in the person of John DeLorean, and one of the first things he did was change Pontiac's boring story overnight. How did he do that? Well, he took a powerful V8 engine, shoved it into the Le Mans mid-size vehicle. Maybe not literally, but that was what happened. He called it the GTO package. With this car, DeLorean built Pontiac's and America's first GTO car, if you leave out the Oldsmobile Rocket 88, and basically created the muscle car and high-end performance car market before Ford. But none of that mattered when the Mustang came. The boys at Ford knew something that DeLorean didn't. DeLorean only knew that young people wanted fast cars. He did not know that they wanted to get girls with it. He only marketed it as a fast car, but not as a chick magnet like Ford did. And frankly, if you had to choose between just a fast car and a fast car that attracts girls, which one would you go for? Apart from his poor marketing skills, the muscle car market soon got crowded. Ford released the Mustang, Plymouth dropped the Barracuda, and Dodge went to battle with the Trident, the Polara, Dart, and Coronet, all muscle cars. But of all of these cars, only the Mustang troubled GM, Pontiac's parent company. By 1966, only 2 years after its release, the Mustang sold over 600,000 units, which was a huge record at the time. GM and Pontiac were getting their asses whooped in a market they basically created, and this made the zeal to beat Ford even stronger. The top guns at GM believed that they needed a new car to rival Ford Mustang, and this was what birthed the Chevy Camaro. But just before the Camaro was built, DeLorean also wanted to build a car that would beat the Mustang. He knew that taking the crown from Ford was a tall order, but he was a tall man, literally, and believed he was up to the task. While the higher-ups at GM did not allow him to take the lead in the fight against Ford Mustang, they allowed him to build a sister car to the Chevy Camaro, and that was the Pontiac Firebird. This car took design inspiration from a concept car called the GMX and the original GTO that DeLorean built. The split-nose grille came from the GMX and the taillight design came from the GTO. The car took the classic Coke body shape that cars used in that era. It came with a skinny waist, a long hood, and an absolutely yoked rear. In other words, this car was strong, sleek, sexy, stupendous, and any other ass you can think of, and it was released in 1967, 5 months after its sister, the Chevy Camaro. In March of 1969, Pontiac released the Trans Am Performance and Appearance package of the Firebird, and this birthed a generation of WS Series cars. This original version was the WS4, and the next one that followed was the W50, which was basically a formula package for the Firebird and also an appearance codenamed the W60. But the first WS6 came in 1978 after the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am made an appearance in the 1977 action and comedy film Smokey and the Bandit. The WS6 version of the Trans Am was a special performance package that cost an extra $324 and came with larger tires, wider wheels, and a thicker rear sway bar. With these extra additions, the sales for the Trans Am soared up to 117,000, and in 1979, an upgraded 4-wheel disc brake was added to the package, and its price went up to $434. The WS6 version continued to evolve with each generation of the Pontiac Trans Am, and by 1987, it already became a standard option for the Firebird Trans Am and the Firebird Formula models. But it is like they say, you should leave when the ovation is high. The WS6 didn't, and in 1992, when it seemed not to have any more effect on the sales of the two Firebird models, Pontiac had to retire it, but not for long. The thing about overstaying your welcome is that you gather enough experience before getting chased out, and this experience will prove useful in certain situations. In the case of the WS6, the experience came in handy in 1996 when Ford released the all-powerful SVT Mustang. You know, the Mustang that sent Chevy and its Camaro back to the drawing board. You don't know about it? We made a video about it. You can check the description box for the link to the video. To help bolster the chances of the Firebird Trans Am against the SVT, Pontiac had to bring back the WS6 model, and this time it came with even more performance. The 1996 WS6 package for the Trans Am came with anti-roll bars 2 mm thicker than base items, firmer damping for the gas-charged shocks, 24% stiffer front springs and variable rate rear springs, 30 to 50% stiffer than base straight rates, firmer bushings for the live rear axles, panhard rod, stiffer transmission mount, and the aforementioned wider, larger diameter and lower profile tires. Don't mind the technical details. The idea was to build the car like a beast, which it needed to be if it was going to take out the SVT Cobra. As if that was not enough, the new WS6 used a 5.7-liter LT1 V8 engine with a ram air feature. This feature was used in the first generation of the Pontiac Firebird in 1967, and its function was simple: feed in cool air into the intake through a pair of hood scoops. And thanks to this, the WS6's performance got seriously upped. For instance, without the ram air feature, the ordinary Trans Am model produces 285 horsepower and 325 foot-pounds of torque. But with the ram air feature and its ram effects, the WS6 was able to deliver 305 horsepower and 335 foot-pounds of torque with the same engine. The car accelerated from 0 to 60 in 5.8 seconds and did the quarter-mile race in 14.4 seconds at 97 mph top speed. It was crazy. By 1998, the performance of the WS6 version was upped again, and this time it had 320 horsepower and 345 foot-pounds of torque, all thanks to the LS engine used instead of the staple LT engines. The LS engine made the car much better and is one of the most popular engine types among gearheads in the world. In 2001, there was a little top-up with the horsepower peaking at 325 and torque at 350. The last edition of the car came and was retired in 2002, and let's be clear, it was not by no fault of the WS6. The Firebird as a model was already dying and the Pontiac brand itself was on its last breath. By the time the 90s came around, there was no saving the Firebird Trans Am, and there was no help coming for Pontiac either. Production numbers were not very high, and when it came to the WS6, they were even more limited. For example, in 1996, when Pontiac brought back the WS6, they sold 31,000 Firebirds, with only 2,500 of them being the WS6 model. This carried on, seesawing a little bit until the year 2000, when impending rumors of the Firebird shutting down made a sale of 8,000 WS6. By the year 2001, the numbers dropped marginally to 7,000 units, but in 2002, the last year of the Firebird, the numbers topped out at 15,000 units. And alas, this marked the end of the Pontiac Firebird Trans Am WS6 model. It held its own against many muscle cars of its era, and while we cannot say it is the greatest muscle car ever built, Ford and Chevrolet would have something to say about that. We can confidently say it is one of the best cars that Pontiac ever built. And it was no surprise that it was one of the hearses that took the brand to its final resting place.